Hello, welcome to Values, Virtues, Ethics and Morality. My name is Mangela Pillay, and today I have here in the studio with me Sister Denise, who will be taking up an interesting subject that I hope you will find relevant to you. Sister Denise, very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
The format of the show is called Socratic Dialogue, and by that I mean it's a process of putting questions to somebody in order to arrive at a truth that's universally understood. It comes from the name Socrates, which is quite in keeping with our Grecian background. The purpose of today's show is to look at the moral, ethical, and value system of every individual and to see whether it works for them, whether it's something that they can still use, whether it's discarded, whether your own value system has become obsolete. And what I find about the show is that Sister Denise introduces us to a new way of being, which I find very candid and refreshing, and I hope that it's something that you'll be able to use in your life. Sister Denise, very warm welcome to today's show.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. Today we would like to take up the subject of morality and punishment. Now, every single country in the globe has a judicial system that punishes individuals who break the laws of that particular country. And yet, most citizens within any country are dissatisfied with things, because one hears expressions like the real crooks don't make it to the courts. One hears things like it's so easy to get away with crime in this country, and the real perpetrators are never brought to justice. We hear things like that. So there's that level of dissatisfaction. So what is your take on punishment, and how does the current sense of morality affect punishment?
You know that we have the idea of the law of karma, which says that every action, word, thought that is performed causes an equal and opposite result. So anything negative will cause suffering, anything positive will cause some sort of reward, blessing, benefit. And the laws of karma, the operation, the machinery of the laws of karma have immediate result, mid-term result, and long-term result. And it's outside of human control to dictate how the laws of karma should operate. And I think many are frustrated with that. And because of this, the legal systems have emerged. A person does something which is against the system of the society, and if you see all over the world, as you just mentioned, you know, all of these things are kind of inside the scriptures of the religious social context. And if you look at the Bible, it says, you know, thou shalt not do this and that. And so you know that that's wrong because it says so. To me, it presumes that human conscience is deemed not to work. And I think that this is the one area where we begin to have a discrepancy between the reality and the perceived reality. To my way of thinking, every human being comes with a conscience. But there are times when that conscience is broken or rendered dysfunctional. So conscience is a mechanism inside the soul which is sensitive to right and wrong, and which is also sensitive to true and false, and which is also sensitive to real and unreal. So as long as a person is absolutely in tune with their conscience, which is a form of soul consciousness, then they don't need any external authority to tell them what to do or how to behave. So what happened to human consciousness such that we need all these injunctions and law enforcement agencies and rules and regulations and so on? So basically, I think it has to do with the weakening of the human soul. Secondly, this strange reality that I have found to be the case, which is that people invariably act against the voice of conscience. And whenever a person does that, the function of the conscience stops operating. So then a person starts to bring in new rationalization for their action. And there are a number of pieces of literature, films, dramas that examine this, which is, I think, quite interesting. But when a person is violated, sexually violated, beaten, in a way that their conscience tells them this is unacceptable, excessive reaction to whatever action I did. Therefore, I am no longer bound to behave correctly. Therefore, I will behave incorrectly because I have to equalize the excessive bad thing that was done to me by being excessively bad back, you see. And this is one of the realities of the law of karma, is it is all about equalizing the action. So, for example, there are lots of parents, especially fathers, who beat their children. And any kind of physical beating of any child is, by definition, a bad karma, because a child cannot be held responsible for what they do until a certain age. And so anything that is done to a child before that certain age, 12, 13, something like that, is going to actually cause that child to be justified in doing actions that they would not normally do because of the voice of conscience, you see. So this is where it all begins, child abuse. And our conventional moral system actually encourages and condones child abuse to a large extent because of the traditions of correcting children through the use of violence based on the presumption, which is incorrect, that a child doesn't have a conscience and that the adults have to provide that child with the conscience, you see. Now, who came up with that idea, I really don't know, but everybody bought into it, and so it continued. Then there are people who get born with very heavy past karmic accounts. Two individuals with whom they have very heavy karmic accounts, and so this then is played out in very abusive behaviors. And because you do not know that there was something in the previous birth in all of these people which created the situations that provoke them to pay for their negative karma, but instead of saying, okay, I'm paying for negative karma, they say, no, this is bad, I will equalize. And so everything becomes very, very escalated, and then they die eventually, and they're still bound by this karmic bondage of an unfulfilled debt that they have to each other. So it becomes very, very complicated. And there are huge numbers of people who are bound in what we call karmic debt. Vast numbers of people, the overwhelming majority of people. Very, very few people have, over the course of many incarnations, performed pure karma such that they are free. Now, people who tend to be very religious, very devotional, they are often having principles in their lives so that they tend to be tolerant when negative things happen to them, and they tend to avoid doing negative things. And this is going to help their overall karmic account to a large extent. But most people don't. They have these emotional reactions that what is happening to me is not right, therefore I will take it upon myself to equalize it by giving as good as I got, you see. So this is a really difficult problem to sort out.
How and why is it that somebody who is fairly morally upright, who is the type of individual who most people describe as somebody who cannot hurt a fly, how does such a person become a victim of a heinous crime where he loses his life? The other way of putting that is a question in the minds of many is, why do bad things happen to good people?
Again, it's what I was just saying. There would be some account with some perpetrator, and when that account comes up for payment, the perpetrator and that victim meet in a circumstance in which that account can be settled through that suffering, that pain, that death.
Sure.
So that is so outside of human control that people mostly say, well, I don't believe that.
Is it the case that the higher one's moral standards, the lesser the punishment one experiences in life, inside or outside a judicial system? Because I see something like, contracting terminal cancer as being punishment. Is it the case that the higher moral standards you have, the less your punishment? Is there a link between the two?
There is
from a karmic
link.
perspective?
There is a link, but at the same time, there are other factors that need to be factored in. It is said in the laws of karma that you can settle your karma through illness, through financial loss, through people behaving badly with you, through accident, through lots and lots and lots of different ways. But at the same time, the way that you take it, the way that you interpret it, there are also many options. If you deep down have a feeling, I deserve this, then the way that you act is you will just go through the suffering thinking, I deserve this, I must have done something really bad, and then when it's over, and you say, well, I paid my dues, Now, another one will not feel, I deserve this. They will feel, no, I don't deserve this. I looked at myself, I checked my conscience. This is not a punishment that's happening. Something else is happening. I'm being tested. It is a circumstance which is demanding that I rise to the occasion. And I'm being tested because I have a character weakness in some respect, and I'm being tested so that I can really strengthen myself in this area. And then they will take it like that. These are two very big differences of how you can feel it. And again, you see, it's very intuitive and very internal. And then it can even become a policy that you adopt for yourself. Because, you see, if a person says, okay, mea culpa, let me suffer and then I'll become a good person by suffering enough, it doesn't actually cause a person to become good, but it actually drains a person's spiritual energy to do that. So it's a kind of misinterpretation.
So, as far as one's future is concerned, what should one do to ensure that your punishment is reduced to a minimum?
It is said that you finish your karma through yoga.
And by yoga, you mean?
By yoga, I mean a very focused remembrance of God in the consciousness of being a soul. So I examined this actually quite a lot, that how does this process work? What is the mechanism of this? And I came to some conclusions. And one conclusion I came to is that, the negative action or the demon inside enters the soul through passion, either the passion of lust or the passion of violence. And once it has entered the soul is then, it's as if the soul is heated up to such a point that there's an alloy of a base metal of negativity that gets fused into the soul. And then the soul, in order to get that out, has to create a similarly powerful passion, and the similarly powerful passion that will be equal to the passion of lust and violence would be the passion of love for God. And in that passion, that can be extracted. But in the process of extraction, your demons will come up to face you. They'll come right in your face, and you have to neutralize them. That is the work.
That sounds like a long journey. Is it a lifelong journey?
When a person decides, I want to develop myself spiritually, I think that is a lifelong process. And in the process, you reach different stages and deal with things.
Sister Denise, the morality, even the subject of morality, people think, oh God, morality, seriously? It's become boring, it's become something, oh, let's wake up today and see how many rules we can break. Okay, that's what the world has become. What is the reward of being moral? What does one actually get out of it? Because we live in a world where nobody appreciates or even wants or likes a goody nowadays. We like a normal person who lives on the edge and etc. Okay, we don't want somebody who's always right, who never puts a foot wrong. Such a person we'd find irritating. So my point is what is the reward for being moral?
I think for being moral, the reward is you look good.
Okay.
But to me, that's not worth it, because it doesn't mean that you are good. You see, moral means...
there's a difference between looking good and actually being good.
Yes.
And the life that you live is for being good.
Well, it seems more interesting to me.
It does seem more interesting, because eventually, I assume the facade will break.
It'll crumble.
And so the being is, you're a person of substance. Okay, so what do you get out of being good?
You get strong. You get strong and you get free, which is very worth being.
You get strong and you get free. I see. Okay. And 40 years of, would you say you lead a model life?
Not at all.
What type of life would you lead? Would you say you lead?
I think that I'm true to myself.
Okay. True to yourself.
See, if you look at the etymology of moral, moral comes from the Latin word mores, which is the decision of the ruling group in any community about what is right and what's wrong, you see. So I do not follow such ideas coming from people, because I find people in this day and age to be very or slightly or somewhat corrupt.
Okay.
And so whatever a person who is a bit corrupt decides about what's right and wrong is of no interest to me, you see. So what I try to do is go to the purest part of myself and to refer myself to God in my inner communication with God, or contemplation on that being, which is not a human being. And then I try to operate according to that vibration, that harmony. And whatever people think is right or wrong, that's fine for them, but it's not fine for me.
So just coming back to what you just said. You won't describe yourself as a moral person, but you're accumulating in yourself, within your soul, what exactly?
Positive karma.
Positive karma. Would
Clarity.
you call yourself a virtuous person?
I'm trying to be virtuous, which I think is far more satisfying, far more real, far more rich than being moral.
Okay, may I ask you, how would you define somebody who's spiritually enlightened? I assume that you'll give yourself that title.
Well, I don't know. But I think someone who's spiritually enlightened is somebody who has access to the ideas that are in the mind of God and who studies them.
Okay.
And then who tries to act on them.
So somebody is a spiritual person is not necessarily a moral person, and vice versa. But
Right.
Somebody who is spiritually aware is somebody who spends as much time with God as possible. And what happens then?
Well, you live with God, you live with truth, you live with that atmosphere and vibration, and then you are a little bit away from normal people. You're not normal anymore. I don't think I'm very normal.
I'm sorry, what does that mean? What is normal, Sister Denise?
Well, normal is to be very concerned with looking good and to conform to the set of moral principles that for which you get rewarded in the worldly world with position, respect, regard, money, and so on, provided you submit yourself to those ideas. To me, that's slavery.
And so would you say you're free?
To me, freedom is very, very important.
If an individual who's watching the show is of the opinion that his entire life is punishment, and from the time he was born, his experiences of deep, deep sorrow, what would be your message to him or her as to how to get out of it?
Probably he would need to go into it first and try and put his finger on the essential original pain, because I think by doing that he's able to become free from it, detached from it, and find his reality and let that go.
Okay, but is that it?
Well, it's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah, you said that in one sentence. I mean, seriously, one cannot end pain and suffering in such...
Well, you have a
Or is
huge,
that where you start?
You have a huge lifetime of pain and suffering. So throughout your lifetime of pain and suffering, you're having a relationship with pain and suffering. And usually people don't like pain and suffering, so they have a whole bunch of resentments. Now, it's very important to write down on a piece of paper everything that you resent. And then you can see what is motivating your thinking. And then you can see and you can decide whether you want to hold on to all those grudges, or whether if you let them go, that's going to contribute to your freedom, which it certainly will. And then you need to look at who you think you are and what you think you are, and keep looking at that until you get some clarity about it.
Sister Denise, you're quite obviously an logical, analytical person. There are many who are watching the show who are nothing like you. Is your way to get to where you are the only way? Can somebody who's very simple, who doesn't think too much simply because they can't be bothered, can they also get to where you are without thinking like the way you do?
Well, there's lots of different kinds of people. And I think the first thing a person needs to do is to figure out, okay, what am I? What kind of person am I? And give yourself some labels. The world gives you plenty of labels. You know, I mean, people used to say to me, oh, she's not very intelligent. And I used to say, really? You think I'm not intelligent? I think I'm intelligent. What are your criteria? What are my criteria? And right from a very young age, I would see that my criteria are really different from other people's criteria. And this insight, which I had when I was about 5 years old, caused me to become much more independent-minded from a very, very young age. Now, not everybody is like that. Some people are very feeling people, very natural people, very simple people, as you said. Some are very complicated people. But, you know, in this world there's so many categories. You start to say to yourself, okay, what do I think about myself? And we really need to try to understand ourselves. We have to come to terms with ourselves so that we can then become integrated. Otherwise we're somewhat fragmented, disintegrated self, you know. So we come to say, okay, and I find it really very useful, the study of Rajyoga, which says, okay, start off with this idea. You're a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful soul, and you're a dot, you know, and you're an actor, and you can do anything, anywhere. And so what are you going to do?
Okay, I think we need to call this interesting subject to an end. Thank you, Sister Denise, for sharing with us your ideas on morality and punishment. And as you heard, Sister Denise said she does not consider herself to be a moral person. That answer surprised me. It may surprise you too. But she did give us a number of techniques of looking at punishment to stop your life from being punishment, and to see the current pain that you're going through as a messenger. And she also shared how not to get yourself into deep or hot water if that happens to be the reality of your life. But it is some food for thought, and we hope that whatever you've heard today, you can take it into your life and enrich your life with it and become a better person. Thank you so much for joining us today, and goodbye. We also hope to see you soon. Take care.